what we were talking about a little bit of the like worrying about what other people think of like you and your music, and definitely feeling that sort of thing. Like I do remember with like each release that I put out, I had an EP last year and then a ambient album the year before, and it's like there's no reason to have like high expectations about both of the things that I put out, because it's like incredibly niche music. But it's like, I have friends. It's like, so I would imagine that like, there would be some reaction to it or something, but like, it's a light reception. But like, again, this idea that we create of ourselves of like, oh man, like I've spent all this time and passion putting into this thing, and like you would expect that other people, like for some reason you would expect that other people would have that same passion towards your music as you do towards your music for some reason.
Yeah. And especially your friends. Like it's so weird that we expect like our friends to like our music, like to genuinely like our music. Like that's such a weird expectation to have in reality. It'd be great if they did, but that doesn't make them any less of your friend just because they don't like your art, which sounds like a hurtful thing to say, but like, I don't know.
Yeah. And I mean, over time, like obviously I've had this podcast for like over 5 years now, and it'll be 6 in March. And like, to expect people to listen to to expect my friends to listen to my podcast is like a bit ridiculous. Like, yes, spend an hour with me every week. Like, I'm not your parents or anything. Like, you're not required to do that with me. And it's like, sure, if you want to, if you like the stuff that I'm making, sure. But like, you shouldn't be expected to like consume my product.
It's not a requirement of the friendship for sure. And it's easy to get caught up in, especially like when your friends are also musicians. And like, I don't know, just realizing that they are not necessarily the market that you're trying to reach. I don't know.
And that might be the, like, I think that's the next step for like the scene, is that, and this is what I've been talking about on the podcast a lot, is that like right now we are a little bit of like an insular type industry, in that the people that go to shows are people who will be playing other shows. And so it's like, yeah, I'm going to your show because I also kind of want you to come to my show.
Yes.
And even though like that's not necessarily why we're going to shows, there's still that little piece of like, well, we're doing this trade here.
Yes. It's an uncommunicated expectation that a lot of people have, for sure. Or not even expectation, just like, it's like currency that people treat going to shows or like sharing releases on Instagram. It's like they treat it as currency in which they're going to expect the favor returned whenever they do something. It's like, that's not who I'm making shit for, man. I'm not about that. If I'm your friend, or if I genuinely like you, I'll be at your show, or, I'll be sharing your music. But it's like, I'm not doing it just for points so I can cash in when I put out a single. It's like, that's not going to get you success.
Yeah, but then it's the hard thing on the flip side too, because whenever you do make the thing and you do want to like tell people, it is like, hey, so I made a thing.
Yeah.
And so it's hard because as creatives, we are making stuff for ourselves, but we are also making a product. And that for line between like something for ourselves and our souls versus please listen to it on your streaming platform and please pay money for it and please come to my show so that I can feel justified in spending a lot of money in this life decision.
Yeah. It's kind of, I mean, it's like when you're thinking about it, like trying to get people to listen or buy it, it kind of touches on this capitalistic idea pretty heavily, where it's like at a certain point we are just adding more noise, adding more product to the world that is already oversaturated, and that's completely removing the art and emotional point of it. But it's like that's how it feels when you're just on Instagram trying to like get people to share your stuff or trying to network. It feels like you're just marketing, like you're just a capitalist, and that's exhausting. That'll tear you down. And like, I mean, you know, like it's not why I'm making music. And so like kind of talked about like the album, putting that out and being like kind of let down just with my high expectations and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, and especially whenever like, you know, you spend a long time on it, you spend a lot of money on it, and it's like, this is good. Like,
Yeah.
I'm proud of this.
Yes.
And like, I feel like you should be too. Like, be proud of me in a way. And that like, you know, blurry line of like the ego of like when you're going between, oh, everything I make is garbage and I hate myself, versus like, I'm the shit and
yes,
like Kanye doesn't have anything on me. Like, you know,
Yeah.
there obviously you don't have to be either of those extremes, but like we wildly fluctuate on that at all times, because whenever you're in the process and you're making something and like you listen back something that you're like, oh man, this sounds so good. And you can get excited about that. And it's like, you can't recreate that feeling for anyone else.
Right.
Not even necessarily from like the music itself. Maybe someone will listen to it and have that experience, but like, it's not guaranteed.
But that's like the goal, right? Is to give somebody that feeling without them requiring the context of, oh, this person put in like 150 hours into this song, just into recording it alone, or you know, this person has grown so much from making this, you know, like you want them to feel the emotional response without needing all the context that you have to feel that emotional response when you listen to it. But you have no perspective on that, being the person that made it. I don't know how you're going to hear these songs that you've never heard. Like, I only know how I hear them.
Yeah. And then there's the like kind of beautiful side of that, which is that like sometimes people will hear something in there that you never thought would be interpreted, and it's like, oh, I thought this song was about blank, and it's like, oh, that's like way off, but like, cool. I admire that like somehow like the things that, you know, you were absorbing in your life led you to like hear this from my music. That's really cool. And like once you put out a thing, it is kind of no longer yours.
Yeah, and it's I mean, you know, like being a singer, you put something out and you think you just exposed yourself to the world. Like you think everybody knows your exact thoughts, knows your processes, like, but that is not the case for the exact reason you just said. Like, it's really not as exposing as you might think initially.
Yeah. Kind of with that thought, something that comes to mind with it is this concept of like signal to noise ratio. And I mean, as an audio person, you know a little bit about just the literal interpretation of signal to noise ratio, but how that applies to kind of a broader philosophical perspective is that people on interpreting content or media or art, they're bringing their own noise, and the signal that the art is trying to communicate is, it also kind of probably has its own noise in it as well. And so like whenever people interpret it, they're adding their own stuff to it that may not have been in the art, but that's just the noise versus the signal.
Yeah. What's interesting, I like that analogy of noise. What I instantly thought of is the noise of people refusing to sit with their emotions from songs. And I can say this to somebody that used to be like this as a kid. Songs that made me feel like heavy, like songs that really elicit emotion, I used to actively dislike just because of that reason. Not because they were bad songs, just I did not like feeling, I don't know. I didn't even have a concept on that. So I see that in my friends now, like when I don't know, when people shit on like very popular cheesy songs, but they're good songs, like they're undeniably good songs, people are still shitting on them. It's like, just like be quiet for a minute and like listen and let like these I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. It seems like they're bringing in this noise of not able to being vulnerable, not being able to be vulnerable.
Sure. Or the other side of just like, just because thing is popular, therefore it's bad. It's like,
yeah,
I don't know, man. Uptown Funk is a banger. Like,
yeah,
there's
like
undeniably
there's a reason it's popular. Yeah, there's a reason it's popular, and money is a big part of that. But there's also another reason besides money why it's popular, and that's because people like it.
Yeah. And then kind of the other side of that, what you were saying about like not being able to sit with the emotions. Like, honestly, my favorite songs from my favorite artists are like the sad, dark ones on the albums. And I always kind of feel weird, like, you know, if people get in your car and, you know, pass the aux and it's like, oh, I love this song. This man is like, everyone in the car is about to be like really sad. But like, I don't know. That's a weird thing because, yeah, in some ways music is for fun, but also music is for expression. And so my favorite songs are the saddest songs on the album, but I can't necessarily just like, you know, make an entire set list off of the saddest songs covers, you know?
Yeah.
Cause you're doing a different thing when you're on stage.
It's very weird because I love ballads. I love like emotionally eliciting songs, emotional, I don't know the phrasing there, but I love the same kind of music where it's like heavy, you know, but that is not what people want to go see all the time at a show. Like they have to know and love you to go sit through 30 or 45 minutes of very slow, sad songs. Like you're not going to win anybody over by playing that kind of music live. So it is interesting bringing that perspective. Like once you step on a stage and play your slow, sad songs, you're like, oh, we need some fun ones.
Yeah. And there is kind of a bit of that, like, I mean, there's the DJ mentality of like, you know, how do you structure this thing? It's the same thing that you do whenever you just order an album, and like picking which songs go where, but like you're manipulating the audience to be like, hey, we're going to have fun now. And then there's going to be like a little lull. And it's, you know, have you ever, like, for example, I DJ'd a wedding for like the first time last year.
Ooh,
and like
nice.
DJ is a light term. I ran the Spotify for a wedding. And yeah, there's like a level of audience manipulation where it's like, oh, okay, well, this next song that was on the playlist, like, it seems like, you know, people aren't really going out here, even though it's a banger. So, all right, let's just go with the big guns and just put Cha Cha Slide. And then, but like what you're doing whenever you're setting up a playlist too is kind of the same thing, or a set list. I mean, is you're trying to like get the audience on your side. So if you really do want to play that slow, sad song, you really got to like work your way towards it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, I've run into a similar kind of thing playing house music. It's not as severe as a wedding, obviously. Like the wedding, like the bride's going to be pissed or the groom's going to be pissed if things don't go right. A show, like nobody cares about the house music really. But just like seeing certain songs make the entire crowd erupt into dance, like that's a cool feeling, you know? It's like I picked that song. And they're
yeah.
to
and it's not even like the same as like playing a song that like the people like, because that's an entirely different feeling. But like you do kind of get like, I deserve credit for that.
Yeah, it's like your ability to read the room and take in all the factors like age and demographic, everything, and specific vibe in that specific moment, and then pick the right like audio to match that. It's like, I don't know. It's like, hey, look, I have good taste, everybody. Like that kind of thing.
Right. And then you do kind of have to let go of yourself to be like, I love this song, but nobody knows this song. There's no reason for you to play this song here. But maybe like at the end of the night, whenever like no one's paying attention anymore, maybe you can play that song.
For sure. For sure.
But you can't like, sneak in that song right after like Cupid Shuffle or something. It's just not gonna.
Right. And that's, you hear about like DJs in the beginning of hip hop and still, like the club scene and testing out records in clubs and seeing like what makes the crowd move in a club. And that's how you tell what a good single is going to be. And if it doesn't make people move, then it's not coming out, not going to be released.
Mm. I guess how do you structure, or how does Kodos structure their set lists based on the audience thing? Because it is a different thing doing an album versus doing a set list.
Yeah. So the last album that we put out, I had next to no stage perspective. So I had no perspective of how things would translate live. And so sets, I don't know. I didn't really have perspective on how to order the set or anything. Now it's like, the whole goal is I just want people to have fun. Like I want people to be able to dance. I want us to be able to have fun playing it. I want us to be able to dance. And so currently there is no sad, slow songs in our set for that exact reason. I not that we don't have them, did away with them all and specifically wrote songs for the purpose of like energizing music. There's so much like, not that sad songs are bad or anything. I don't want to sound like that, but there's so much like negativity in the world. Music can be an escape from that, and concerts specifically can be an escape from that. And so I don't know, just realizing like what I want to be doing, and that is that.
Yeah. And the hard part with that is that like even with those slow sad songs, there is kind of, if you're going to do it live, there's the caveat of that like people need to know them.
Yes.
Before you do that, because you can go and see a band that you like really love and you love everything on their newest record or something. So then whenever they finally do play that song that maybe is a bit slower or sadder, you can still be excited because like, yay, we're sharing in this emotion together. But whenever you're just like a local band, no one's heard your stuff. There's no no one's heard your stuff. You can't even expect it. And so, I mean, it's nice if like you hear someone like singing along in there. It's like, whoa, hey, cool, thanks. But like, it's a hard thing because as someone who is, I mean, we're all fans. As a fan, we want to hear those slow, sad songs, but like as musicians, we can't do it yet.
There's this weird self-indulgence that we all have, where it's like we all think that everything we do is the shit and that it needs to be heard. Or like, I don't know, like local bands, like it's like akin to a local band making a biography or like a biographical bit. Like you don't have a fan base. Nobody cares. And I don't have anybody in specific in mind, but it's just like when nobody cares, who are you making this for? Because you're clearly making it for other people, but you don't have fans. So like you're just self-indulging at this point. I don't know. You're putting energy into the wrong things.
It's a strange thing though, because I mean, there's a certain egotism to it whenever you are making like a biography, whenever you have like 10 fans. But at the same time, if you like make it big somehow, if Nirvana like comes out, then you kind of do want to have that biography from like where their first album was at, because you want to know what was going on in that early stuff. But that's the thing. It's like nobody cares until everybody cares. And then, and so there is this weird thing about like what we're doing as we put out ourselves is that we are making history. And in some way, even though it may or may not actually be history, but even if you like reach some sort of point where people know about you, then people can like go to your Wikipedia and like read up on you. Cause I do that with all the bands that I'm like interested in. And it's like, oh, where are they from? What was their background? The same questions that I ask people on here. Like, I want to know these things about artists. And so if there was no one taking note whenever these things were happening, then it is just like hearsay, or if it's just like, I don't know, we don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It's a good point. It's like balancing the line between like too much and necessity.
Yeah. Well, but again, like, who am I to think that I'm going to be the next Kurt Cobain or something, so that I have to make sure that everything that we do is documented, so that whenever I die at 32, like there's at least some sort of historical documentation that people can pore over for decades.
That's kind of like touching into just human nature. I feel like we all want to leave a legacy, even if somebody's not musically inclined or making music or anything. Like, everybody wants to leave a legacy. I don't know why or for what purpose or any, nothing like that. But I think everybody has that desire innately.
Yeah. And we're in this weird time where like people our age got to grow up with phones and smartphones and stuff that, like, even whenever we were in like middle school, like there are definitely like grainy, terrible camera phone pictures from back then that like exist. And in the same way that our parents' generation and back, we have these old film, like, oh wow, this is them at this age, but like we have such a massive amount of content that all of us are generating, that like, we are able to, whenever we're like 80 years old and it's like, grandpa, tell me about the 2000s. And it's like, well, there was this big genre called emo, and everyone wore eyeliner and dyed their hair black. And here's a picture of your grandpa with like straight hair or whatever.
Here's 80 other shots of the same picture, just trying to get the right pose.
Yeah.
It is interesting to think about like the equivalent of going through family photos, like at Christmas or whatever, because that just happened. And you see maybe 200 photos over the span of a couple albums, a couple of physical photo albums. And now I think about like, when we're 80, how are we going to pull up a computer and go to our hard drive from 60 years ago and find our 3,000 pictures from the second week of January? It's like, I don't we all have so much like to store and lug around. It's like, it doesn't have physical weight, but it does like have a burden on you, like this digital storage of all the content we're constantly making.
Yeah. I worked for ACM for a little bit as well. There's just like hard drives just filled with this stuff. And also even just like the content that like the Flaming Lips generates is just like hard drives full of content. And it's like, it's there, we have it, it's for something.
And you can't just throw it out.
Yeah, right. And ACM just itself also just has like, folders and folders that somehow got stored into like, all right, here's, 2012's Studio 4 class that they stored it on the school server for some reason, and it's here now.
Yeah, it's easy to get stressed out thinking about all that stuff. Because like, so much of my to-do list is like keeping my digital life in check so I don't get overwhelmed when I sit down to write a song. So I don't have 45 things on my background on my desktop. It's that kind of thing. It's like, yeah, I don't know. It's easy to get overwhelmed thinking about all that.
Sure. But like, it's also that we have I don't know, my like music folder on my computer is like gigantic. And there are some product or projects that I might pull up and it's like, oh, I need this one sample that I used in like 2013 and the project won't play back correctly unless I find that sample.
Yeah, or like software incompatibility issues, can't even open the session or plugins or whatever. Yeah. And God, I can't even imagine like your podcast. I mean, this has been going on for 5 years every week. Like you've got to have a folder somewhere that's massive full of podcasts.
So every 100 episodes, one, I do I get interviewed thing. So all the questions that I ask all the guests, I get interviewed every 100 episodes, and that's neat. But also every 100 episodes, I will go through the archive, just save the final bounce of the podcast, like put everything into one folder and delete everything else. There's no way for me to go back. There's no going back. It's gone. And there's a bit of freedom in that.
Oh yeah.
There isn't some way for me to like go back and like do revisionist history on anything that's already out. Anything that you can find on the podcast feed, like that is what it is forever now. And that's my own history as well.
Yeah, the freedom is real though. Like it's weird how these, I wouldn't even call that a possession because it's like weird to think about digital storage as a possession of yours, but it's weird how our possessions control us. Like, and just getting rid of them can free us in ways we had no idea. Like, yeah, I deleted some old Pro Tool sessions kind of along that same line, like maybe a week ago. These are sessions from people I recorded 6 years ago, like, and not just friends that are like people that I'm never going to see again. It's like, why am I still carrying these around? I deleted them. I felt great. Felt very free.
Right. And then at some point in like 12 years, when one of those people that you recorded becomes the next Kurt Cobain, you're like, Caleb, where are the files?
No, yeah, definitely. You're
like, sorry, they're gone.
Yeah.
Don't know what to tell you. How was I supposed to know?
Yeah, that'll be a shitty moment, but for the next 12 years, I'll be free.
Right, yeah. But I mean, yeah, we generate so much content, and kind of going back to like the whole what other people see of us, that all of this content that we're holding on to so tightly, no one's going to hear most of that. And unless you're freaking Bruce Springsteen, there's no need for you to like save every single voice memo as though you're making history, because no one cares. Yeah, there's thousands of people that want to hear Bruce Springsteen's voice memos, but no one wants to hear my voice memos.
Right. Well, and even you can think about like the Beatles have done this, where I love the Beatles, right? They're one of my favorite bands. I could not care any less about like take 3 of a deep cut from Sgt. Pepper. You know, like I could not care any less. Like, why are they still just putting this out? You know, it's to make money. But it's like, does anybody like, I don't know, does anybody truly want to hear that?
Yeah, well, I mean, that is a part of the like mythologizing that we do for like the stuff that we really love, in that, yeah, like the Beatles aren't the Beatles anymore. They're these gods of music that, I mean, obviously, like Get Back, that documentary like got really popular, and it's like, oh yeah, we're watching Paul like turn this like random nothing thing into like a hit song. And it's like, yeah, that probably also happens to like, I mean, any of us are probably writing hit songs from nothing, but because no one cares.
Exactly.
And so that is a sad reality that I've come to think about a lot, in that marketing sometimes is more important than just the product itself, and that if there's enough money behind something, then it doesn't really matter what the thing is, because people are going to see it, and because people see it or hear it, they're going to value it more.
For sure. And it's true. And it's like, we kind of talked about like doing it for yourself versus like doing it in marketing, you know, just like straddling that line. And it is tough because, like, yeah, you can either be content with nobody hearing your stuff, and maybe one in a million getting some lucky break, maybe, but you're just making it for yourself, or you can spend all your time and energy trying to like get other people to listen to it, and maybe that pays off too, you know, in a more consistent manner. I don't know.
Yeah, and so I mean, there's like Grammy winning or Grammy nominated stuff that's in the, like, you know, the bottom recesses of like the Grammy nominations. There's like, you know, when you keep scrolling down on the on the big list, there's like, oh, you know, best comedy album, the, like, you know, best mixed comedy album or something. And it's like, yeah, there's some engineer that mixed that and got a Grammy for it, but that's because they did like a whole for your consideration thing and whatever. And it's like, this person probably didn't deserve an award for it necessarily, because there's like hundreds of other better engineered comedy albums. But like, because someone wanted that award, they got it, and so that like gets credit for it. But like, you know, it's cool that like Paul McCartney was able to pull a hit song out of nothing, but like anyone else can too.
Right. And it's, I wonder, I don't know, it's I wonder our perspective versus somebody that's not a musician watching that, you know, because it seemed like that was kind of the difference in social media when that clip kind of surfaced from the documentary, is like musicians saying like, oh, that's just how it works, and then normal people being like, non-musicians being like, wow, that's amazing. but that is just how it works. I don't know, I feel like we're jaded a little bit, just being musicians and not realizing that we do that same magic like in our own. And I think we're just kind of a little salty that we're not getting recognized for it in the same way Paul McCartney is.
Sure, yeah, because I mean, yeah, we are making magic, and yeah, and there are times when we do perform, and someone does come up and is like, man, that was really special, thank you. And it's like, oh yeah, I guess it was. But like, we're so embedded in this thing that it's just like, yeah, I mean, you know, you just heard the 99th run of me playing that song that I happened to be playing live, but I played it that many more times before. And even as I was playing it, you know, whatever moment you felt was special, I was probably thinking about like, all right, what are the next two songs on the set list? You know, can I like, do I know all the chords for this thing? All right, well, do I? It's just like this other process going on in the background as, you know. Do you have those songs that like whenever you're playing them, you're just like elsewhere?
Man, yeah, especially now, because there's only a couple songs where I play guitar and sing. The rest of it, I'm just singing now, so I can focus on like being a front man. And we've cut these songs from the set since, because it's a learning experience. But when you're playing these songs, there's just moments where it's like the crowd isn't connecting and you're not really able to put the energy into it because it's a slow song or whatever. And so those moments, it's easy to get taken out of the moment. And I'm very much in my head then. It's like, oh God, we got to get to the next song ASAP. We got to not ever do this song again. But when it's going well, man, it's just like, I'm honestly not thinking about stuff, just kind of like in the moment.
Yeah. There I did cut one song from a set list because like every time I played it, and even during rehearsals, like every time I played it, I was like, man, I should have started the song faster. All right, we god, this thing, like, it just every time it's like a slog, and it's like not a bad song. It's just like, nah, I don't need this one anymore.
And it's, especially if you have a band behind you and you're like starting the tempo, if you start too slow, you cannot just speed it back up live. Like, you know what I mean? Unless you're like a pro band, like you're at that tempo.
Yeah, and because I would definitely do that acoustic. Like there's lots of times where I'll start it super slow. And it's like, all right, when I kick into the chorus, I'm about to just like jet off because this is way too slow. Or the opposite, where whenever you get committed to like starting it too fast, and we're just like, oh gosh, like if you have if you have like a hard keys part, like oh no gosh.
Yeah, and singing especially. I mean, you can tell when you're playing an instrument, but it's too slow or fast. You'll be able to know the second you start trying to sing it.
Yeah, and that's a weird thing for me. I have a lot of songs that I've had written for a long time that are like getting tracked now. And so it's like, all right, I have to like decide on the tempo, and this is it.
Yeah. Yeah. And what a hard decision, truthfully.
Because if you set it too slow, then you're sort of like committed to that for the rest of when anyone else ever hears it. And I have one song that I feel like the verses are too slow and the chorus is too fast, but it's all in the same tempo. And it's like, how do I I guess I could like subtly stretch the tempo in between, but
I think honestly that might happen more than we realize. Not specifically tempo stretching, but like the chorus being like 2 BPM faster than the verses or something. That's not something people are just talking about on the streets, but I think that might be a thing in these songs we listen to more than we realize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we probably do it ourselves if we're like playing it live, and just like the energy pushes the song, and unless you're playing to a track, in which case it's like you can feel the band trying to rush, but like the drummer is like, nah, this is where we are.
Our drummer normally, I mean, we play with the click. He's the only one that hears it. But the last show we did, we had a fill-in drummer who did not play with the click. And what a different experience that was, man. Like it was better and worse in ways. You know, it's just different. It was like cool in ways because you get to like just feel the vibe and run with it. But then in other ways, it's like, man, this is way too fucking fast for me to be singing right now.
Yeah. And that's where you get to like rap singing. But if you have those songs that you're like kind of bored with, if you do kick it off that fast, it at least makes it kind of interesting.
For sure.
This is just sort of a side thought, but like, how much money is a reasonable amount of money at this point to spend on music, especially as like local artists?
Is this for like somebody that just wants to be in a band and like play shows?
I just mean for you.
I mean, man, it every $3 I have goes to music. Like, for better, like, I mean, that's either a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. But it's like the only thing I want to spend money on outside of food, or like, you know, traveling is cool too. But like, I don't really buy house possessions. I just buy music. So I have no idea. It's all so damn expensive too. I don't know.
See, because I'm a little bit of a digital hoarder, as we kind of mentioned earlier, but like I would rather get like more plugins than buying like gear. And especially like the price point for like plugins go on sale because it's not real. So like, sure, this plugin that we designed 8 years ago, sure, that can be $30 instead of $100 today, whatever. Whereas like an LA2A costs what it does because of what it is.
Yeah, and the maintenance costs, and like if you don't have clean power, like I would not want to run tube gear, just out of fear of fucking something up. And plugins honestly sound pretty good these days, especially universal audio ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's weird. I mean, you went to the same music school, like where you're around all this gear and like this like mentality where analog is like better in, or like doing things the right way. And then you get into the real world and you're like, I just want a nice single channel chain and like maybe 16 converters if I need to multi-track. I don't need 10 grand in mic preamps. I don't need, compressors outboard. I like some tone shaping stuff is fun, but other than that's all plugins. It's way more practical financially and use wise.
Yeah. And then just like the convenience of being able to just like stick a thing on and that's the sound, rather than like, all right, I have to print compression now.
Yeah.
We're committing to this.
Yeah. It's like, it slows the workflow having to use hardware, and like having to recall hardware. It just slows the workflow straight up.
And so I think with that is like, is the value worth it? Especially with gear. Like, I don't know, how much am I willing to spend on like a keyboard? And is like, man, that Nord Stage 2 would be really nice, but is it worth that much?
Right. Instruments are, they have some grace as far as like, I really don't know if there's a Nord equivalent replacement out there, especially if you're trying to play live and stuff. And, like Fender, there's no Fender replacement. There's no replacement for a good Gibson yet. There's no amp sims are cool, but not, I don't know. Instruments, I feel like, have some grace still. They still have some hardware usage, like especially hardware synths and stuff.
See, I'm so in the box that even with synths, I'm just like, what? I can't do this thing, man. I'd rather just like, like, why would I spend $8,000 on a mono synth whenever I can just have those sounds
for sure
and play multiples of them?
For sure. And recall their settings and tweak and undo, save presets, like all the, the whole thing. Like it's, I agree with you for sure. For sure. It's weird how much music we listen to that is made entirely in the box with no cool instruments, no cool like gear. It's just FL Studio or Logic and a vocalist into a shitty mic, into a shitty a Focusrite interface or something. Like you don't need the best of the best anymore, it seems, if you know how to mix it and get the vibe right.
Yeah. And even so, last year, I don't know if you know who like Adam Neely is.
That sounds very familiar.
He's a jazz bass player that's like popular on YouTube.
I see.
But him and this other guy, Ben Levin, did an album in 24 hours.
Ooh,
and so
geez.
they like wrote and recorded and like produced 8 tracks in 24 hours.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
Granted, the lyrics are like mostly nonsense, but like some of these are like bangers, that just like came out of that. And hearing the quality that they put out with that and seeing like, because they live streamed it as well, and seeing clips of like what their room was whenever they like tracked vocals, for example, is like, oh, I don't need a studio.
Like, no, dude, shit is crazy now. Like Isotope has this D verb thing that takes out the short reflections from it's like, I haven't used it yet, but I can just imagine, because Isotope's already amazing at taking out sound, like noise that you don't want. And for better or worse, everybody has access to sounds that were made in multi-million-dollar studios. Like anybody can go find a good sounding drum kit sample. anybody can go find a free VST piano. Anybody can subscribe to Splice for $15 a month and have access to all that stuff. It's like, I don't know. It's easy to get into like a negative mindset. It's like, oh, musicianship's going away. But the other side's like producing's coming into its own, more so than it ever has really.
Well, it's more that it's just become decentralized. You don't have to book a $1 million studio to get $1 million sound. You don't have to spend, your life savings on a music school education if you can just like learn off of YouTube. And
For sure.
So like, yeah, and then these people can hopefully buy a DAW or a lot of times just get a cracked version of a DAW and just like make their stuff and have really cool sounds, and it sounds no different than, I mean, yeah, there's obviously stuff that like a good mixing engineer goes a long way.
True.
Like, yeah, it'll turn a crappy recording into a good recording if you have a decent mixer, or the in between step of like editor. But like that is money well spent. But otherwise, like you can kind of record anywhere.
For sure. Yeah, even like I remember starting to mix and not having things like Melodyne or not knowing how to use Beat Detective, like you mentioned, editing. Even just knowing how to edit a song and having the tools to do it goes so far. Like, I mean, whether people are, pride aside, like every track that you hear professionally has been Melodyne, unless it's a Beyonce or, some phenomenal singer. Even Beyonce's probably Melodyne.
Yeah, I think even then, like, I think Ariana Grande edits her own vocal takes. And she's really good at it.
That's impressive. Yeah, that's impressive. I don't think I'll ever not edit my own vocals just for that same reason, like knowing how to and stuff. It's like, then you hear, some local bands that don't have access to those tools. And it's like, okay, that's money well spent. Melodyne, if you're a self-producing band, is money well spent. That's a necessary like gear buy. But, other than that, yeah, Ableton has stock EQs that are fine. Like Pro Tools has stock plugins that are fine. Especially if you have the current Pro Tools. Do you have current Pro Tools, Santiago?
I've been using Pro Tools 11 since like 2013.
Okay, no shade. I was too up until like I just got the M1 Mac, and I got Pro Tools entire plugin suite with the subscription. I never had the entire plugin suite. Oh my gosh, dude! Like there is some very cool stuff in there.
Yeah, and I mean, I make up for it because I have the like Isotope Everything bundle. So, I mean, I edit podcasts. So like, yeah, what you're talking about, like Isotope cleaning up audio, like I know firsthand what crazy wizardry is going on in that thing. I don't know how they do it, but like give it a sample of noise and it's gone. Like, yeah, it's beautiful.
With very minimal change to the timbre of the track in general. Like it doesn't like EQ it funkily. Like it's very powerful.
There is a limit. Like if you start like, 2 or 3 times through, you start getting some lossy artifact type stuff. But like, I mean, if you're denoising like a vocal that's in like a room like this, which, I have a little bit of muffling in here, it goes a long way. And especially if it's going to be sitting in a mix, you're not going to hear that noise.
No. I've gotten like, it's weird getting OCD with it because I'll go through a session and do it to every guitar track just because I'd start noticing it. But then you step back. It's like, A, that stuff's natural for a guitar, and B, like nobody's hearing that in the mix. It's like sometimes the tools are too powerful.
Yeah, sometimes that's the problem of having the freedom of being able to like do everything. Like you can edit the life out of guitars if you like take out the like string noise. Like the that is part of the instrument. And like, yeah, I actually will sometimes do those things on purpose to at the end of a take or something, I'll like let it ring and then like slide my fingers down the fretboard to like have that. I kind of call it like a guitar breath. Uh, because it is like it's the movement of your hands down the instrument whenever you're not playing it. And those things give life to a recording where yeah, you can just like, all right, there's no breaths, there's no mouth noise, there's no nothing, and it's like, all right, where's the person in this?
Yeah. Yeah, like the human element is completely gone at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is a little difficult, especially whenever like I don't know, if you are playing to a click and like drums especially, like what is the degree to which you beat detective your drums?
Because there's a point where it's like noticeably off and consistently noticeably off. And then I think at that point, it's just like somebody would hear it and be like, oh, that's bad. You know, but then there's just shy of that, there's human. You know what I mean? And then above that, there's like perfect. I don't really know. There's 5 songs on this EP I'm working on right now, and 4 of them I edited the bass and the drums to be pretty much on the grid, you know, just to have consistent kick and snare and stuff like that. The 5th song I didn't edit. I tried, but it sounded like absolute shit putting everything on the grid. And it's just like, I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to tell. Where do you exist in that spectrum?
Yeah, well, since I live pretty much out of the box, everything that I am doing so far is like right on the grid. And it's difficult finding the life in that. There's like little humanizing things that you can do that, you know, even if it might live exactly on the grid, like if I'm doing like electronic drums, for example, even if it lives exactly on the grid, just like randomizing the velocity or like playing it in with your hands, and like you can quantize what you play in, but like the velocities at which you played it, that like sort of natural accenting that happens, you can leave that in rather than just like, you know, hard max it at 127. And so, yeah, it's hard playing with that. And then there's another one that like I had Trevor Lindley play in like,
oh yeah,
Trevor, a song like way back in like Studio 4, and I like what he did in it, and I don't want to get rid of it. And so I lined everything else up to that track.
Nice.
Instead of making his stuff line up to everything else, because I like how it felt. And so, yeah, it's a really difficult thing to like find the humanity in it. And even what we're talking about right now, kind of zooming out again, that like, you know, we're going to put this thing out so that other people can hear it. It's like no one that's listening to it is going to go that deep and try and hear like, this isn't melodined, how dare they, like, or this is melodined, how dare they. Like, if you're an actual singer, you should be able to just hit the notes. And it's like, no one can hit those notes
for sure,
but no one can tell,
especially because now everybody is subconsciously trained to hear melodyne vocals. That is the bar for a good singer, is melodyne vocals on the radio. And so if you're not that, automatically, without anybody knowing why, you sound worse. And that's just unfortunately how it is. Like, melodyne vocals have become our, not to get too technical about this, but just like a standard that's we're all propelling ourselves, basically.
Yeah. I mean, gladly, like, melodyne is only like what, $100. So like, for just like the bass version. You pay $100 to get Melodyne. Yeah, sure, why not? But like, yeah, and it is also kind of a nice thing that like the audience is now just used to what auto-tune sounds like, because everyone's using auto-tune. It's just like a nice, it's not a crutch, because it's just a sound. Like if you're hearing the auto-tune, it's because that's the sound. It's not because like, oh, you can't sing, so you're using auto-tune. Like that's not what the decision was. But it is nice that like people are used to that sound, so that, yeah, even if you have sort of like a natural sounding vocal, you won't be able to hear the Melodyne in it. Maybe if you have it soloed and you're like listening to it and it's like, ooh, that one was hard tuned. But like, and there are some songs that like watching In the Heights last year, there was some songs in there that I was like, ooh, that is tuned. But like, not everyone is listening to things the way that we are.
For sure.
The level of detail that we spend, like, does it matter? Does it add up to anything to you in the end?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all for us, right? All these little things, like, we're, so we can feel like we put out the best possible thing to our ability.
Yeah, and then last year I tried this experiment, I guess, which was I put out an EP, and I just like, I had electronic tracks that I'd just been sitting on, and instead of trying to like perfect them, I just went, what if I just put this out as is? There was some like stuff missing from some of them, and so one of them was written to be played with other musicians on stage, and so I didn't have a bass track on it, and so real quick I just put a bass track on it. It was just playing the root of every chord. It wasn't even anything complicated, and so I was like, all right, finish that up. All right, cool, here's an EP. And I just tried that for myself, to be able to let go of this perfectionism that not everything that we put out has to be impeccable.
Yeah.
And it's nice. Like, I'm pretty proud of that EP. It doesn't, it's not groundbreaking or anything, but like, I put a thing out last year. It's great.
Yeah. And that's like just as important as like feeling like you did all you could. You know what I mean? Like being prolific and getting things done, like, is arguably more important than like making sure you have the best possible product before you release it. It's like something kind of, this is more business. I've seen this in small businesses that succeed, but we're kind of the same thing as musicians. Is like people that kind of just start and just take the punches as they come. They don't feel the need to prepare for every little possible outcome before they start. They just start and do it. It seems like those people find success more than the people that sit and try and think about every possible problem they'll run into and prepare for that before even starting. Like, it's like, I don't know. I don't really know. I feel like this is getting away from what you just said about fighting perfectionism,
but it is that. I mean, it's more important to finish something than to never put anything out. That's something that I realized last year, is that like, if people aren't seeing that you are putting out music, you don't make music.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you don't put out anything, then are you really even a musician?
Yeah.
That's a scary thing to think.
It's like the kind of the mindset of like, I heard in the Michael Jordan documentary, I think, you're only as good as your last win or something like that. Like, you're only, so like your last win doesn't matter again in the game you're in now. You know what I mean? All that matters is the game you're in now. It doesn't matter if you're a winner last week. It's like the same kind of thing. It's like, it doesn't matter if you put out like an album 10 years ago. Like, have you put anything out recently? I don't know.
Yeah. And so if you spend all this time trying to perfect a thing and make it as noiseless as possible, and not everything is on the grid and everything is tuned perfectly and everything, and then it's like, hey, when's that album coming out? Like, oh, I'm working on it. And like, I'm saying this to myself. I've been saying that I have an album coming out for like years now. It's all written, it's all there, but like I haven't put it out yet. And so it's like, yeah, I need to put out the thing, because until it's out, I'm not a singer-songwriter.
So is it like ready to be mixed, or do you need to track vocals? Like what's the missing key?
I need to track all of the instruments that aren't electronic.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so although most of the guitars and bass are already tracked, and I can just do all that stuff here. Basically everything that I can do at home, I will.
Yeah. Saves money and time, man. Yeah.
Yeah. But having the time to do it too is the
yeah, it's weird, like talking about all this, like be prolific and put stuff out, but then the other side is it all takes so much time. Like an album takes so much time, especially if you're mixing it yourself and all that stuff and recording it yourself. Like, and it is so easy to get burnt out if you just like hammer it out. Like you really got to space it out for your own well-being. Like you can't just take 3 days and spend 72 hours straight working on it and try and finish it. Like, I mean, that's fun sometimes, but like that's not really realistic.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not gonna mix this album myself. I know my limitations, and I don't trust my own ear. I'm also too close to the music. I can't trust myself to do it. And that's another important part of the process, is knowing the stuff that you can't or shouldn't do yourself.
For sure. And like putting your ego down to like, especially as somebody that is also an audio engineer, like I understand that, like that toughness of swallowing your pride and being like, I'm going to let somebody else mix this. I know exactly what you're saying. Like it's, you got to have that humility, humbleness.
Right. Well, because also if you're going to be the one that does it, you're never going to finish it, because you know everything that you did, like the little thing that you did whenever you tracked it. And then, yeah, you also have the freedom that like, as you're mixing it, you might go, I might retrack this part. And it's like, no, you just took everything back a step. So just put everything together and just hand it to someone else.
Exactly. And that person is just by nature never going to put in the same amount of obsessive time and attention to detail that you would. And that's both good and bad, because that gets it done. But at the same time, it's like there are things like, if I had done this, I could have done X and done Y that we didn't have time to do because so-and-so was mixing it, or, or whatever. It's all a trade-off.
Yeah. And just letting someone know what's there, and not being like there to like, sure, you can be in on some sessions, but like just let them do their thing because you trusted them to make it sound good. Let them make it sound good.
That's so weird. I've being a local kind of, I came up, recording other people and stuff. It's weird that like the difference between what you just described and then the difference where you see most people around us, like they're only working with the people they're working with because that's who's around, not necessarily because that's who they trust musical opinion. You know what I mean? Or it's because they're, their friends mixing it for free, or so-and-so is recording it for free. So then this like the dynamic becomes weird, because you didn't pick this person to work on your stuff because you like what they do. You picked them because they're offering to do it for free, but then they put their own creative taste and investment into it all. And then they have a weird, like, I don't know,
a say in the matter.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at that point, it's like, what is your time worth versus what is your money worth? So, I mean, if you don't have the money to spend on it, then yeah, you are going to get your friend that might mix it for free. and that will have its own caveats, but that's the decision that you made in trying to save money. Or you can find someone that you like their stuff that is local. You don't have, like, there's people making awesome stuff here whose stuff you like and whose decisions you trust. That, yeah, and not just merit either, because there are people who have merit that I'm like, that's not necessarily for me.
Yeah.
And so
Same.
Knowing that too, to not go to this mixing engineer, not go to that mastering engineer, but to find someone that has made stuff, or even just like their influences, that you know what stuff they like. And it's like, oh, since I know that you like this stuff, I know that you will know what I'm going for
right
in this track.
And that I mean, that I've never had that, but I imagine that makes a world of difference. Like when you're working with a producer or something, that you click on that level, you know, that's got to be such a great feeling. Like
it's more like having your child be babysat for the first time. I don't have kids, but like just like knowing the like protection that you have over this thing is like, all right, here you go, please don't kill it. But like also knowing that this person's fine, you trust this person and it's okay. It's hard to let go, but also, you know, it'll be okay. And then you'll be happy with it afterwards. Cause yeah. And I'm going to try not to ask questions. Oh, what did you do? What did you do here? And it's like, oh, I like muted 5 of your tracks.
Yeah.
Cause I probably do have too many tracks, but like, you know, it's okay if it sounds good. If you like it, then go with it. It's okay. Trust it.
That's that second ear. You know, that's the outside perspective, the beneficial outside perspective coming in. If it's somebody like you trust, you know, and because they can help you make something that's better ultimately. Yeah.
With that, Caleb, thank you so much for doing this with me. Where can we find you and your things? One more time.
At Kodos Band and at Caleb E. Gray. KodosBand.bandcamp.com.
Hey, pay for that music.
Spotify, anywhere else that everybody else is at.
Yeah. But I mean, the music industry kind of just lives on Instagram anyways, so.
It's true. Yeah, I'm hoping the switch to TikTok doesn't happen in a visceral way.
It might have to. We're so neatly entrenched in Instagram, but like the TikTok algorithm just like is so much better at showing people things. We might just have to make that shift.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are we olds? Are we olds in the industry already?
It's a whole another discussion.
Well, once again, thank you so much, Caleb.
Thank you.
I'm Santiago Ramones.
I'm Caleb Gray. Thanks for having me.
And now here's 27 Minutes by Kodos.
continuum, coalescing into what I've been saying for years, spurred by unrealistic expectation, routinely haunting my situation. I said it's for the good, but I lost control of it. Consistency is what I do. You're the one I wanna live. What I've been saying for years. Unrealistic expectation. What I've been saying for years. Routinely haunting my situation. 27 minutes till I see you again. I've been saying for years. There's a lot to talk about. It's been troubling our heads. I'd like to move on, but what's been said, it's been said. Been saying for years. And it's rain falling well. Since I'm to the resolution.
You can find everything that I do on my website, santiagoramones.com. I make music and produce audio. The music you're hearing now is music I made. You can listen to official releases by Santiago Ramones on Spotify, Apple Music, and the other streaming places. Or you can buy it on Bandcamp because a single purchase is the monetary equivalent of streaming it all day, every day, for about a week. I'm working on an album, so if you'd like to hear that at some point, you can buy my music, or you can support me on Patreon. There's a Discord server in which we discuss deep topics from the podcast, but it's also a community of beautiful human beings. All the links to all my things are on my website, santiagoramones.com. If you like the podcast, leave comments on social media, leave reviews saying how much you like the podcast, and tell your friends about it. I want to help the world have deeper conversations. So thank you for listening to and supporting Bit Depth.
I was in the podcast with my 3 things. They shape my life philosophy. Those 3 things are: love never fails, it's going to be okay, I might be wrong.